Hello, welcome along to another Betfred football show. We've got lots to debate, and it's been a little bit all change, hasn't it, in the case of the last week or so, with Liverpool closing the gap on Manchester City, and with Paul Robinson, the former England goalkeeper. Fred's paid out on Manchester City winning the league. He might be regretting that decision, Paul.
Well, I think it's all changed, hasn't it, very quickly. We didn't see City stumbling like they have done. Liverpool, we talked about a few weeks ago, if there's any team that can put a run together, it's them. I mean, you look at their record, they don't really lose. They can put a run together. They're unbeaten since last November. They seem to be sweeping teams aside at the moment, played well in the Champions League as well. And it does look like there's a title race on. But when you actually look at the two fixtures, I think Liverpool have got to go to City, and then the only other team in the top six they've got to play is Arsenal. City, on the other hand, they've got to go to West Ham. So they've basically got a similar away game in the remaining fixtures in the top six. Yes, they've got top six sides to play at home, but away from home, they both have very, very similar fixtures. There's a massive, massive game coming up on the 10th of April, Man City, Liverpool. It could all hinge on that game because I can't see where any of them are going to drop points.
Yeah, well, might have to drop points one or the other. It might be a draw, but it is interesting, isn't it? We'll talk about the fixtures this coming weekend, Paul, a little bit more detail. But if you're Liverpool, do you just concentrate on your job and not worry about City? Jurgen Klopp has kind of hinted at that.
Well, they have to. I think, they've got to pick up the maximum amount of points that they can. Like I touched on, they don't seem to lose at the moment. I was looking back at their fixtures and their recent record. Yeah, they have dropped points in areas as City have done. Neither of them seem to lose, which is obviously why they're at the top of the league. And like I said to you a few weeks ago, if anyone can mount a charge on City, it's Liverpool, because they are capable of putting a run together. But they're competing on many, many fronts. They've got the Cup Final this weekend. They've got the Champions League. They've got the FA Cup. They've got the Premier League. It's how he rotates that squad. They seem to be doing a fantastic job of it at the moment. But do you know what? Thanks to Tottenham Hotspur for giving us a title race. I mean, they didn't give us much else against Burnley the other night, but what they have given us is one fantastic finish to the season.
Yeah, and Antonio Conte has given us some headlines as well. We'll discuss those in a little bit more detail. We're going to walk through all of the fixtures for you ahead of the Premier League week. And we're going to touch back quickly on the Champions League as well. We've seen the British teams in action this week. What did you make of it all?
I thought they looked strong. I thought all of them looked really strong. I was even impressed with Manchester United. I know they only drew at Atletico Madrid, but I think the character that they showed,
Paul, didn't they?
They had to dig in, and again they had to dig in at Leeds the other night. The weekend, it was a tough game for them. They've had a lot of negative publicity. They've had a lot of negative press around the dressing room about the spirit, about the attitude. But 2 games in a week against Leeds and away at Atletico Madrid that could potentially have been very, very difficult fixtures. They've dug in and got results in both games. So it shows there are a lot of strong characters in that dressing room. Chelsea against Lille, okay, at home, again, they're expected to win. That one's not done. It's not finished. They're going to have to go there and still do a job. But I think Manchester City, they were outstanding against Sporting Lisbon. Didn't expect any other result, really, in fairness. But that one's done, put to bed. And also Liverpool as well, they're looking very strong. I mean, we've got 4 really strong teams, really strong candidates for potential finalists. And I suspect, I've not looked at the odds, but I suspect Liverpool, after the way that they're playing, and City will probably be joint favourites for the actual lifting of the trophy.
Yeah, very short. City remain the favourites, though, Paul. Do you think that's about right? They've not lifted the trophy before. Now they've got Liverpool breathing down the neck as well in the league.
Well, massively so. But I think this has been the holy grail for Pep Guardiola ever since he's come to Manchester City. So it's going to be a real test now. The question that a lot of people are going to be talking about in football, a lot of pundits, who's going to prioritise what? Both managers will say they're competing on all fronts, and they are. They desperately both want to win the Premier League, and they both desperately want to win the Champions League. I slightly suggest that Pep might want to win the Champions League a little bit more than he does the Premier League. Whether he would sacrifice the Premier League at the extent of winning the Champions League, I don't know. He's a born winner. He wants to win trophies. They all want to win everything. But if there's a crunch match on the same weekend as their next Champions League fixture, does he change the team? Which he's done. Listen, he's done that brilliantly through the season. His rotation has been outstanding. But I think Pep might just want that Champions League a little bit more than Jurgen Klopp does this season.
Yeah, well, that's the one, isn't it? That he hasn't landed with City. So maybe that's where his priorities lie. But they won't give up the title, that's for sure. It's going to go to the YE fancy, Paul, isn't it?
It is going to do now. I think, like as Fred paid out a while ago, it looked to be done and dusted and cut and dried. But I think, City dropping points that they have at home, not losing games other than the Spurs game, Liverpool putting the run together, we really have got a title race on. And like I said earlier, touched on earlier, the remaining fixtures that they've got are both very, very similar. They play a couple of the top 6 sides at home. Liverpool only go away to Arsenal, and City are only away at West Ham out of the top 6 sides. And you could argue they weren't the most difficult games in the top 6. But that game on the 10th of April between the 2 sides is going to be a massive, massive game.
Yeah, might not go to the wire. Might go to April the 10th, and then we'll have a better idea. Let's walk through the fixtures. We've got lots to talk about on the back of each of these games, at the top and also at the bottom as well, Paul. There is a fixture tonight as Arsenal and Wolves go head-to-head. Arsenal could move to within a point, of course, of the Champions League places. They're very much in the groove, Mikel Arteta's team. But Wolves, well, they beat them a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? They're not a bad side at all.
Well, listen, it seems it was only a couple of weeks ago that we had this reverse fixture at Molineux. 2 very similar teams in the way that they played this year. I think Arsenal defensively have been a lot better. They've only won 1 of the last 4 at home, though, but defensively they've been good, keeping 3 clean sheets out of 5. And Wolves, defensively, they've conceded a few goals of late, which hasn't been their trademark. You know, Jose Sarr in goal has probably been their player of the season. And I think there's 2 very, very similar sides here. I can see this one being a really low-scoring game at the risk of boring punters. I think the bet here is under 2.5 goals. The last 7 games, each of these sides have been involved in has been under 2.5 goals. So I can see another stalemate because both of these sides do draw a fair bit of the time. And I'm looking at the record. Wolves have taken 5 points from their last 3 trips to the Emirates. So I can see another point for Wolves here. So I'm going to go under 2.5 goals and a score draw. So 1-1.
There you go, 1-1. It was 1-0 when they met at Molineux back in February. Let's walk through the fixtures then. It's a big fixture, isn't it, on Friday for Norwich, with teams. Burnley are picking up points, of course. Newcastle are picking up points. Leeds are going the other way. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Norwich City, they're not out of it. But is this a game they can win at St Mary's?
Do we have to talk about Leeds at the moment, or can we leave that one for this week? But no, Norwich, I think, they've won 2 out of the last 3 away games. Both teams defensively struggle. Southampton look a lot better of late, and they were one of my tips to go down at the beginning of the season. But I think they've had a really good second half of the season. Thought they played particularly well against Everton, and they're going for their 3rd straight home win. Listen, we said a long time ago that we thought it was cut and dried that Norwich were going down. They've given themselves a lifeline. They've given themselves an opportunity. But I think it's going to be a big ask to go down to St Mary's. Listen, it won't be easy for Southampton. I think both teams defensively will concede goals, and it will be a good game. It will be a test for Southampton. But I just can't see Norwich staying in this league when you're looking at the table and looking at the games that they've got left.
Yeah, win for Norwich will put them within 2 of safety, but Newcastle would then have a game in hand. We're going to talk about this as walk through the fixtures because 2 massive talking points. Leeds United take on Spurs in the early kick-off on Saturday. Your 2 former clubs, bit of a split allegiance as far as you're concerned here. Who needs the points more, though, at the moment, Paul?
I think Leeds need the points more. Obviously, Tottenham need the points for Champions League places and European places, but Leeds desperately need the points for their league survival, if you like. And it's going to be a huge,
down to
game.
that they're now thinking about that because we were saying they've got enough leads, but with players not coming back, they are struggling.
And noises about Patrick Bamford. He's not going to be back anytime soon, and he's one of the key players. Liam Cooper and Calvin Phillips have been 2 huge misses. When they come back into the scene, into the team, the leadership qualities will come back in. The characters around the dressing room will come back in. We've seen them conceding far too many goals. Once again, Illan Melié's made the 2nd most saves in the Premier League. The goals that they're conceding at the moment is phenomenal. You can't keep shipping that amount of goals in that amount of games in a short space of time. They are. The worrying thing for me for Leeds is they've played 25 games, which is 2 more than Burnley, 1 more than Newcastle, 2 more than Everton. So if they are going to be in that bracket, it's going to be very close. I still believe that they've got more than enough to stay up. I think they've got the quality in there, but I find it hard to see the manager's stubbornness in playing the way that he does when they're shipping goals like they do against Liverpool, against Manchester United, against Manchester City. 7s, 6s, 4s, poor schoolboy errors from defending, from set plays at times. But when you're constantly conceding that amount of goals for the same reason, why he doesn't adapt, why he doesn't change is one thing that will always perplex Leeds fans. You'll find very, very few Leeds fans that will throw criticism at Bielsa because of what he's done, and quite rightly so. But the way that they don't change the style of play against the so-called better teams, they leave themselves wide open. and teams like Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United pick them apart. And in my opinion, Tottenham have got the same ability to do that. Yes, Tottenham have got defensive frailties, but you look at the front three that Tottenham have got, Lucas Moura, Kulusevski, Moura, Son, Harry Kane. They've got the pace, they've got the power to do to Leeds what others have done, but also at the same time, they can be susceptible to Leeds. But I really do think that Leeds are in a relegation scrap at the moment. I do.
Yeah, well, Leeds can play that way when they've nothing to lose, but all of a sudden they've got everything to lose, haven't they? So what are they going to do against Spurs this weekend?
Well, I think the pressure is huge for them. And I think, playing in front of an empty stadium at times last season maybe helped them in a way, because when you're playing well, the crowd behind you is, and it's a great thing to have. But when the pressure and the expectation and it's a full crowd, it's always difficult for you. And I think it's now becoming a time where Leeds are playing under pressure. Results haven't been great, and they're in a place that they've not been in before. They're in a real relegation fight, and it's time for the characters in the team to come out. But at the same time, we've seen Spurs go and win at Manchester City, and then if you speak to every other Spurs fan, I'd say 90% of them said, "You watch, we'll go and lose at Burnley on Wednesday night." And guess what? They did. It's that horrible phrase, Spursy, and that's what they are at the moment. It's a really difficult one to call, this one between Leeds and Spurs, but you can guarantee one thing, that there'll definitely be goals at both ends. So due to have been such a very difficult game for me to call, and actually, in all honesty, I think there'll be goals, and I think it'll be a draw. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
Thought you might. Entertaining, but 2-2 draw. Yeah, probably satisfied both teams to some extent. But let's just talk about Antonio Conte, because he had a bit of a run. He was full of praise for his players against Man City. He said it's one of the best group he's worked with. Now, all of a sudden, he's come out and not criticised the players, but criticised the structure and the ambition of Tottenham, and even hinted he might not be the right man for the job. He's very emotional, but what do you make of that?
It's difficult, especially from a Spurs fan's point of view. He's a very reactive manager, and he's very honest. I mean, if you ask him 2 or 3 days after his press conference after a game, he might give you a very, very different answer to what he was feeling at the time. He's a passionate man, and he's reactive, which at times doesn't come across well. You watch his interview after the game last night, you'd think he'd have left the club by now. You'll watch his interview after the Manchester City game at the weekend. He said he's working with the best group of players he's ever worked with, and you'd be expecting us to be looking at Champions League places. When you employ Antonio Conte, that's what you get. There's quotes from people around him that's just Antonio being Antonio. He's passionate. He believes what he does. He's working 20 hours out of a 24-hour day. He's sleeping 4 hours, which is what he said in the media. And he just hates losing. The man hates losing, and he doesn't want to lay blame anywhere else. He's working his players hard. There's obviously issues going on at the club. I mean, you look at the managers that had Pochettino, Jose Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santo, and now, in my opinion, the best, Antonio Conte. But it's the same group of players. It can't be, every manager can't be a bad manager. The players have to be evolved. There has to be incomings into that side. The managers are failing with a very, very similar group of players. So something there has to change on the playing side. Maybe that's what he was alluding to after the game. But I find it hard that he's questioning his own future. But I think he's genuinely that honest that he's going, look, I've lost 4 out of 5. If this was any other manager in any other job, you'd be questioning his future. Just because I'm getting paid X amount of thousands and I'm Antonio Conte, why should I be the same? Why hasn't my future been talked about? It's going to be an entertaining ride with Antonio at the helm, put it that way.
Yeah, certainly will be. Emotions up and down, but it'll be an interesting one till the end of the season. Let's walk through some of the other fixtures, and we'll touch upon Man City and Everton in a tape. But let's walk through Man United against Watford. Watford still in the thick of the relegation fight, still hanging in there. But Man United, he's had a lot of stick, Ralph Rangnick, but they've not got a bad record under him, have they?
No, the record's good. The record's okay. You look at the results that they've got. Performances might not have been great, but I think it's just the hype and the noise that surrounds Manchester United that comes out of the dressing room. Never before have we heard so many negative stories about players, about managers, about the way training is, about Manchester United. But I think that's
how do these stories get out, Paul? Because you've been in that dressing room and you've probably had a story come out that might be true, but a lot of them aren't. What's the reaction from the players? Do you look at it with bemusement?
Well, the thing now is there's so much social media, and it's so very easy for people to pick up on a tiny little thing. But players have families and friends who they believe that they can confide in. And as a player, if you tell one of your best mates while you're playing golf something, he then tells one of his best mates, or you tell your agent in good faith, who actually probably doesn't have that much loyalty to you, but does have a loyalty with a journalist, or your agent, your family, your friends, or you're talking to someone in confidence. Stories come out of football clubs all the time, whether they're right or wrong. 9 times out of 10, there's somebody in the football club that's given the journalist these stories, and they're quite willing to divulge information. It's difficult. It must be difficult for a manager like Ralph Rangnick, because actually, when you look at him, he doesn't look like a Manchester United manager. He doesn't look like a right fit, and he's surprisingly honest in a lot of his press conferences, which I think has probably led to his downfall in certain situations. But I think he's handled a lot of situations very, very well. And there's one thing that you can't question him on is his honesty. Stories will always come out, but like you say, Manchester United results and where they are at the moment, they're sitting in pole position for that 4th position. Listen, it's not where Manchester United want to be. They want to be challenging for the league. But where they've been for the last 12, 18 months, 4th place this year is a good finish for them. Great performance in the Champions League, a lot of character in the performance at Leeds. So there's a lot of good things going on there at the moment.
Would you stick them in the ACCA this weekend for a home win?
Oh, they're a banker against Watford. Yeah. I mean, Watford have won 1 in their last 5. I mean, you look at the way that they played last night against Crystal Palace. Yes, it was 4-1. They were poor. They conceded far too many goals. Look, last time that they played each other, Watford won 4-1, I think it was, at Vicarage Road, wasn't it? Back in November last year. But I mean, that's light years away. Since then, both teams have changed managers. The results have changed. And I think that's one of your big home wins for the ACCA for the weekend. I've got Man United to win 2-0 and Pogba to score, because I was so impressed with him at the weekend against Leeds.
Yeah, need your big players to stand up, don't you? And to be fair, he's been playing pretty well. We talked about Palace. They were a bit up and down side. They are capable of looking brilliant one week and not so great the next, but they've got a talented and a young bunch there, haven't they? They come up against Burnley. They're well drilled, and they are getting results all of a sudden in your former club.
Well, Burnley's revival, I mean, they've given themselves a real chance. I mean, we looked at it 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're saying, look, Burnley sitting bottom of the league. Have they got a chance this year? Yes, they've got games in hand, but look at the games they've got in hand. They're not great fixtures. But I mean, they've put themselves in with a real opportunity now, especially their performance last night against Spurs. We're guilty of it in the media, and as ex-players and pundits, quite often talking about a side's failure instead of a side's success. And we talk about Tottenham last night and how poor they were and they didn't perform. Burnley were good. Burnley did what they do well, and they executed a game plan and they beat Tottenham. And I think, deservedly so last night, the way that Burnley played. They deserved to win that game last night. So that Sean Dyche and Burnley can take a lot of credit for the way that they've turned things around. Wout Weghorst has been outstanding since he's come in. He's got his goal. He's caused teams a lot of problems. I think it'll be a closely competitive game against Palace. I really do.
Maybe to edge it, Burnley or Palace to get the win?
I think it'd be close. I've gone for a low-scoring draw, 1-1. I've sat on the fence, but Zaha scored 2 goals against Watford the other night. Burnley could get out the bottom 3. But, Palace has sat comfortably in 11th. Burnley very, very rarely score more than 2 goals in a game, and they're defensively a lot stronger than they were. So I'm going to go for an under 2.5 goals. Once again, score draw. Apologies, sitting on the fence again, but I don't think there'll be many goals in that one.
Yeah, there might be quite a few draws. There's some really competitive, and teams daren't lose games at the moment. I'll get your verdict on the relegation picture when we've walked through the fixtures. Massive game at Goodison. Man City, having lost last time after that incredible winning run, go to Goodison. Frank Lampard has had a little bit more time to work these players. When we saw Everton at home in the Cup, the Goodison was absolutely rocking. It's often the way, Paul, you know this, you go on a massive unbeaten run, you lose a game, and then sometimes you lose another one or lose a couple, or lose a little bit of confidence. So could there be a shock on Saturday?
I find it hard to make an argument for it when you look at the stats. You look at 2 teams' statistics side by side. They're miles apart, they're oceans apart in where they are in development and what they're competing for in the league. I mean, Everton have won 1 of the last 5, but when you're looking at it in a broader scale, I looked at it this morning, they've won 6 in the last 23, and they've lost 13 of those 23. So Frank's been given the job, and he's going to have to be given time to turn it around there. Managers get jobs because clubs aren't in a good place and they're not doing particularly well. And that's what Frank's walked into, and he's going to have to be given time. City will look for a reaction, and they haven't had that. They haven't had a problem with that in the past. That game against Spurs, it wasn't a particularly bad performance. The result is what was poor for them. They got their 2 goals, and they struggled to break Spurs down at times, and which we're all shocked because Man City haven't won a game. I've got no qualms about the way that City will react. I think, you look at the stats, you struggle to make any kind of case for Everton. They've got a good squad of players there, in my opinion, of about 12 to 14 players. Frank's going to have to get them playing in the way that he wants to. But I think this will be a big ask against City this weekend. I've gone for a City to win and more than 3.5 goals in the game. I really can't see anything other than a City win.
There you go. Could make it a game. Everton, they probably have to score first, wouldn't they? You fancy to maybe just make City think a little bit after what happened last week, but just too strong for you. Yeah.
You wouldn't want Everton to score too early. You wouldn't want them to poke the dragon too early, because then it could be.
Yeah. So City to go marching on, and the advantage is Liverpool are not in action. We'll talk about the cup final as well. Let's quickly talk about West Ham Wolves on Sunday as well. West Ham still hanging in there.
They are. They're doing extremely well where they are. I mean, for me, they're in a really important point of the season. They've had 2 defeats, 2 draws, and 1 win in the last 5. So they're in a real season-defining moment. They're struggling for goals. Antonio's not scoring the goals. Souček hasn't chipped in with as many goals as he did last season. Jared Bowen's been absolutely outstanding, as we've known, but goals aren't coming from the other areas. You're looking at Ben Rama, you're looking at Fornals. The goals aren't coming from any other areas. Talked about Wolves. They're playing against Arsenal tonight, so they've got 2 away trips to London. So it's going to be a big ask. But as I say, I think from West Ham's point of view, it's a really, really important part of their season. They could go either way.
West Ham then, just to nab this one.
Well, I was looking at it. West Ham have conceded in 5 of their last 6 games, and Wolves have done exactly the same from having a good defensive record. Both have conceded 5 in their last 6. So I've gone for both teams to score, West Ham to win. I've gone for a surprise Souček scorer because he hasn't scored for so long. We know he can score goals. Yeah. We know he gets goals. So his odds will be decent. So I've gone for both teams to score, West Ham to win, and Souček to get on the score sheet.
There you go, combined bet. That'll be worth a few quid, Paul, for sure. We'll talk about the Cup Final, Carabao Cup Final in a tick. As far as the top 4 are concerned, it's City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and one other. We're looking at United, West Ham, Arsenal, or Tottenham in that group, hunting Champions League.
If you'd have asked me that on Monday or Tuesday of this week, I'd have said absolutely. They're in pole position after that win against Manchester City. But then they play like they did against Burnley, and the manager comes out with the comments that he has. So
maybe too inconsistent between now and then.
But they all are at the moment. West Ham are inconsistent. They've just gone through their results. Arsenal are inconsistent. Wolves have snuck up there. They're in 7th place. Tottenham 8th, looking at the league now. Arsenal, for me, they're sat on with 2 games in hand with 4 points behind. Manchester United have got it to lose, I think. Looking at the way that they're playing at the moment. I watched them play at Leeds at this weekend, and I was very, very impressed with the way that they dug out a result. Defensively, once again, conceded too many chances, conceded 2 goals in a manner you wouldn't expect them to. David De Gea has made the most saves in the Premier League. And from a Manchester United point of view, you don't want your goalkeeper doing that. We all know that if you don't concede goals, you win football matches. That can be their only Achilles heel. But for me, Manchester United are in pole position at the moment. Arsenal could be the ones that creep up on the outside due to the games they've got in hand. I'd love to see Spurs up there, but after Wednesday night's performance at Burnley, I don't know how I can make a case for them.
And quickly, a relegation zone, Burnley have given themselves a fighting chance. We think Newcastle, we've kind of said, should have enough, but they've got to keep winning. Leeds are looking over the shoulder. Brentford maybe are a danger, and you've hinted at that before.
Brentford down. I'm looking at the table now in front of me. 14th place, Brentford down. I mean, Burnley are sat on 18th on 20 points, and they've got 3 games in hand on Brentford. So they're on 20 points. Brentford are in 14th on 24, with a far superior games played ratio to anybody else in the bottom.
And they take Newcastle this weekend. This could be defining for them, couldn't it?
It's a massive game. I think they've got Christian Eriksen coming into the fray just at the right time. That could be a huge boost for them. But the teams down there, them and Leeds, are the ones that at the moment, their current form, the way they're conceding goals and losing games, you would worry for. Everton as well. Frank, I think he's got enough in his squad. I think he's got enough there to keep them up. But as I say, as the top 2 have bunched up and got us a real title race, anything from Brentford down now, we could see any combination of the 3 going from there.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Right, let's talk about the Cup Final, Carabao Cup Final on Sunday, Chelsea against Liverpool. Maybe a little bit of a distraction for Liverpool, having sort of clawed their way onto the coattails of Man City. We know about Thomas Tuchel and his desire for trophies. How do you see the Cup Final going?
Jurgen Klopp's got a desire for some domestic trophies as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The FA Cup and League Cup have eluded him thus far. So it'll be a fantastic game. I mean, Chelsea's recent form, it's not where they'd want to be. They've had the problems with Lukaku. Liverpool at the moment are on the run that we discussed earlier. it's going to be a fantastic game. I think Chelsea will try and keep it tight, and they'll try and hit Liverpool on the break. Whether Lukaku plays or not will be the big talking point. Didn't play the night of the Champions League, so that would suggest that the manager's saving him for the weekend, ready for the cup final. I think it's going to be a huge game of two big heavyweights of English football. It's going to be a hard one to call, but I do think Liverpool have got the advantage going forward, and the current run that they're on, regardless of who he plays. Don't know whether Josh will come back in. I think he's out. But Diaz has been outstanding since he's come in. Salah's come in. The goals he scored against Leeds midweek, they look formidable against Leeds. Okay, granted, Leeds were poor, but Liverpool are on the upward curve at the moment. I think it'll go to extra time. I do think Chelsea will be able to hold them out. So I'd probably go for an extra time win or penalties for Liverpool, but don't bet in 90 minutes because I think it'll go further.
Yeah, could go to the wire, but Liverpool to hold the trophy at the end. Just a quick one, and a bit more self-indulgent. I'm a Bradford City fan. Big appointment, Mark Hughes. But the reason I'm asking is because he's a manager who's managed at the very highest level, yet it's had to step back and gone back to League Two. Yeah, Bradford are a massive club, big support. But managers that he's been out of the loop for 3 years, and to get back in, it can be difficult. You've got friends who are out of football at the moment. So can you understand that appointment?
I can understand it. Yeah, it's a foot back in the door. It's very, very hard to get back in the game. You know, if you've been out of it for a while, let's say, not all players can, or ex-managers can walk into top jobs, as we've seen. I think from Bradford, it shows a huge amount of ambition. I think it's probably their biggest managerial appointment in their history, especially what league that they're in at the moment and where they're competing. I think it shows a massive amount of ambition on both parties, on the manager, Mark Hughes' point of view,
big
to get
risk
back into
him,
football,
isn't it, at the same time,
to do well. Listen, if he goes to Bradford and fails, where do you go there? I mean, if you go to a top Premier League club and fail, you've got the mattress of the bottom half of the Premier League, the Championship, and the rest of the leagues below. If you go there and fail in League Two, then there's questions of where you go from there. Bradford have got huge ambitions, like you quite rightly say. They've got a massive stadium. The fan base there is incredible. Obviously, living not too far from the area, seeing the fan base that they've got. Beginning of every season, it's a similar way to Leeds are, not in the stature of Leeds, but they'll get 20, 30,000 there. If they start doing well and get promoted to League One and the Championship, big things could happen there. This could be a real turning point for Bradford City in the recent history.
Yep, taking a gamble, both of them, Bradford and Mark Hughes as well. Big weekend then, Paul. Where are you watching that Leeds Spurs game? From behind the sofa?
No, I will be there. I'll be on duty for a radio broadcaster. I'll be wrapped up on the gantry, hoping for a very good game and a sterling score draw. Yeah,
2-2. Listen, brilliant to have you as always, Paul. Love your views. Plenty to talk about. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about next week, don't you, after this weekend?
I look forward to it. It's a great weekend of fixtures.
Yeah, it certainly is. That is it from the football show. Thanks to Paul Robinson as well. And we're wrapping up things. Good luck with all your bets. And of course, we'll be back with another Betfred football show next week.